Good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome all of you to this regional stakeholders meeting to review progress in implementation of the Ocean InfoHub project in Africa and to plan for future activities. This workshop comes exactly 1 year since we last met online on 10th of June 2020. At that time, we were hopeful that we would be able to meet face to face before the end of 2020. However, this was not possible. Though this did not happen, we've been able to make good progress in implementation of the Ocean Info Hub. We'll be getting presentations on update on implementation of Ocean Info Hub, examples of related projects that we have been working with, such as Microsoft, presentation on progress in developing the ocean data and information system ODIS architecture. One thing that good news that we've had over the last year is being able to get additional resources to develop a portal for training opportunity. And this will also be presented. And also activities related to OIH training. This will give us a good basis to discuss how we proceed with implementation in the coming. As we make discussions, one thing that I really like us to focus on is how do we involve the National Oceanographic Data Centers that had been established during the earlier phases of the Ocean Data and Information Network for Africa. I believe that we'll be able to find a way of incorporating this as they would be able to provide significant amount of data and information and also link us to national institutions and governments, which are co-stakeholders for this initiative. With these few remarks, I'd now like to invite Elsa to give us some housekeeping information. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mika. Just to let all our participants know that we have simultaneous interpretation available. For selecting the language of your preference, please click on the icon that is in the bottom of your screen and select French or English. Please send your questions via the icon of question and answers. Thank you so much.
I now invite Lucy to give us an update on implementation of OIH. Lucy, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mika, and good day to all our participants today. Thanks for joining us in this webinar. I have a brief overview and update of the Ocean InfoHub project to present. And after this, it'll be followed by two more technical presentations by our chair and co-chair of our technical working groups. So this first presentation will be very much an overview of the project as a whole. So firstly, as an introduction, this is a global initiative to improve access to marine and coastal data and information. This project commenced in April 2020, and the project is funded by the Government of Flanders, Kingdom of Belgium. The objective of the project is to develop interoperability between existing information systems and thus improve the flow of information to end users. The project has three main objectives. Firstly, to link a network of hubs that will be able to exchange data and information, thus contributing to the transfer of marine technology by enhancing shared scientific and technical capacities to render a wide range of data and information products and services available. The project will develop a proof of concept for an underlying ocean data and information system architecture together with partners in a co-design process. The project will develop regional or thematic end-user communities of practice to promote and foster awareness and collaboration with established organizations and systems, providing information and connecting contributors and users with the resources to support their efforts. The Ocean InfoHub project has two sister projects, the Ocean and Data Information System Catalog of Data Sources, which currently describes over 2,000 online sources of marine and coastal data in 16 categories, and the Ocean Data and Information System. These three projects are very closely linked. The Ocean InfoHub project has developed the first phase of the architecture underpinning ODIS and is concerned with involving user communities and establishing proof of concept. The Ocean InfoHub project will first work with global IOC-associated online resources, including Ocean Expert, Aquadocs, the Ocean Best Practices System, the World Ocean Database, and the Ocean Biodiversity Information System. This is extended by other partners in ODIS-CAT, as well as Euroocean, marinetraining.eu, and EMODNet. We have 6 initial data types with which we are working. These include people and institutions, documents, spatial data and maps, training opportunities, vessels, and projects. And these are also data categories in the ODIS catalog of sources. We have 3 pilot regions, obviously the Africa region, Latin America and Caribbean, and the Pacific Small Island Developing States. These 3 regions have participated in the development of the proposal for the Ocean InfoHub project and will take a lead on pilot projects to test interoperability between existing information hubs. This schematic shows some examples of existing data and information hubs at national, regional, or global scale. A global ocean data and information system architecture will be developed to enable interoperability with local, regional, and thematic infrastructures. And this will be developed with willing and able Ocean InfoHub early adopters in a process of co-design. This architecture is based on a lightweight schema.org implementation patterns, and we'll hear more about that later in the proceedings today. Although anyone can implement ODIS, and it can be used independently of any IOC system, we will be developing a global search hub, also as a proof of concept or global demonstration. Some services that might be offered include finding specific expertise, finding vessel-based training opportunities, peer-to-peer collaboration, finding data or information or spatial data or metadata. These services would all be in support of the IOC capacity development strategy. The project will focus on the transfer of local knowledge, on supporting early career scientists, and on remedying gender disparity by increasing access to information, technology, and opportunities. The project will also support global reporting and assist countries in their reporting requirements for, among others, the Sustainable Development Goals, the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, the Paris Agreement, the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, and marine biological diversity of areas beyond national jurisdiction. The project will also assist IOC member states to report on ocean science capacities through the Global Ocean Science Report. Some of our project achievements to date include establishing an active technical working group that uses GitHub, Slack, and meetings as a basis for discussion and work. We have over 70 members from all over the world, including partner projects and our 3 regional communities. And we have over 2,600 posts in our Slack discussion forum discussing various aspects of the project. We've developed documentation for the ODIS architecture for all 6 priority themes, and this documentation is available online. We've also developed proof of concept in a test from a search across databases, returning results from marinetraining.eu, Ocean Expert, and OBIS together in one result. Then we have developed and we continue to build the 3 regional communities of practice that are implementing one or more of those 6 priority patterns. And we've increased visibility and interest from around the world. We have established a website and mailing lists, and we encourage anyone interested to join the Africa mailing list. So in conclusion, the project will facilitate better access to global databases, but also better visibility of national and regional data holdings. Regions and countries can all learn from each other. We've got great examples from Africa, Pacific, and the Latin America and Caribbean regions. And these regions can all exchange these lessons and learn from each other. The project development and implementation principles are based on co-design, as I mentioned. And so we seek the participation of a wide range of partners and end users that are involved in the sustainable use and management of marine areas. And as Mika mentioned, we'd like to really involve the NODCs more in this initiative. So we welcome any expressions of interest from National Oceanographic Data Centres. And finally, we welcome involvement from additional partners, whoever they may be, and that is our website address. Please put your questions into the Q&A or into the chat, and we'll address these during the proceedings as well as in the discussion session afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lucy, for your presentation. Just checking, Riete, are you able to make your presentation already, or should we come back to you later?
Riete is with us.
Okay, proceed then, Riete. The floor is yours.
Good morning. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for the opportunity. My name is Riete Pretorius, and I am the project manager for the Oceans and Coastal Information Management System, as well as the Marco South. So today I will, oh goodness, this thing is running by its own, I see. Maybe I can just share it on my end.
Yes, of course, we can.
Okay, so I'll just tell you more about the initiatives that we are running in South Africa related to the Ocean Info Hub. Okay, so the Oceans and Coastal Information Management System was identified as part of the South African 9-point plan launched by the presidency way back in February 2015. And the main aim of this initiative was to grow the South African economy, focusing on the oceans or blue economy. It was then a key and integral part of the Operation Phakisa Oceans Economy initiative, with the aim to produce very fast results in a matter of 3 to 5 years. Below, as this image indicates the various initiatives that was formed as part of the Operation Phakisa Oceans Economy Initiative. And then in particular, the National Oceans and Coastal Information Management System, and extending the Earth observation capacity of South Africa was then coined as Initiative 6. Initiative 6 is, as I said, an information management platform, but then also had to support all the other initiatives with this process. Okay. So basically what the National Oceans and Coastal Information Management System did was it took data from various sources, various types of data, including remote sense data, feature data, ex-situ data, in-situ data, and model data, and then pushed them through a number of models or algorithms specifically focused on very specific areas like marine domain awareness, water quality, fisheries, sea state, coastal hazard, and marine spatial planning, and then producing decision support tools that was aimed at supporting and informing planning, decision-making, situational analysis, action, etc., as you can see in the diagram. Through this process, obviously a number of other data sets were also developed. So through the processes of models and algorithms, etc. So just a quick, as part of the decision support tools that was delivered as part of the OSIMS project was at its more mature state, marine domain awareness, where we track various vessels in our EEZ, fisheries and aquaculture, monitoring sea variables, sea temperatures, algae, chlorophyll A and B constituents, also marine spatial planning. We looked at sea state and how particular how we can support the National Sea Rescue Institute with sea rescues in our area, considering sea state, coastal flood hazard, water quality, and then at its more concept phase, marine predators in our area. Then the Marine and Coastal Operations for Southern Africa project came along. The European Union funded the Global Monitoring for Environmental and Security, or GMES, and Africa program that aim to promote the more sustainable management of our natural resources by improving decision-making through the use of Earth observation data. The African Union Commission signed a cooperation arrangement with the European Commission in Brussels in 2018 to facilitate the African Union's access to Earth observation data from the Sentinel satellites of the Copernicus program. In 2017, the CSIR submitted a grant application as lead of an African consortium to the GMES in Africa program's marine and coastal thematic area in a response to a call by the African Union. The proposal was based significantly on our technical synergy and co-funding from a current project, the Operation Pakisa project that I was just mentioning, the OSIMS project. The grant was awarded in 2018 and the contract was signed in 2018 on the Marine and Coastal Operations for Southern Africa, and we call it MARCO South for short. So how does this all fit in together? So we started off with the National OSIMS project, and then we extended it to, so the MARCO South then aims to support and involve and collaborate with our regional partners in Southern Africa. And then in getting access to these Sentinel sites, we get access to the Copernicus program, get that data then back into and supporting the National OSIMS project through this collaboration. The countries and organizations involved as part of the MARCO South project is the Benguela Current Convention that represents Angola, Namibia, and South Africa. In South Africa, partners are the National Sea Rescue Institute, as well as the Abelobi Research Group. In Mozambique, we have the University of Eduardo Mondlane. In Tanzania, we've got the Western Indian Ocean Marine Science Association, as well as the University of Dar es Salaam, or the Institute for Marine Sciences. And then in Kenya, we have the Coastal Oceans Research and Development in the Indian Ocean. So similarly to OSIMS, we also have a whole methodology to work with, and we're also getting the products, the data products, pushing that through a number of algorithm models and processing chains to support a number of actions, by mainly then supporting on a regional, extending the OSIMS reach and learning to a regional level. In the MARCO South project, we have 3 services developed. It's mainly focused around marine and maritime, aquaculture and fisheries, and then coastal services. And within these 3 services, we've got 6 applications, which cover the ship traffic monitoring and sea rescue, aquaculture support in Abelobi, and then lastly, coastal services, coral bleaching, and water quality. So participation and collaboration on the Ocean InfoHub for us, we would like to make services and decision support tools and data more available to a wider audience and user group who want to be part of this wider network of scientists, stakeholders, and decision makers. And we'd like to participate on an international platform with regard to marine or oceans and coastal forums to the benefit of oceans economy and conservation. We would also like to get access to more services, decision support and data, but also to provide that, and to also collaborate on the development of services and decision support using data to support the economy and to provide support for general conservation of our oceans and coasts. And that's it.
Thank you very much, Rich, for your presentation. A couple of reminders. We have interpretation, English, French. Please check the globe icon at the bottom of your screen to select the relevant language. And please put your questions in the Q&A tool. Our next presentation is on the Ocean Data and Information System by Pierre Luigi. Pierre Luigi, please.
Yes, just a moment, I'll share my screen. Hopefully the right one. You should see that now, right?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, right, thank you very much. Okay, so thank you very much. And this presentation follows on from Lucy's presentation where she mentioned ODIS, or the Ocean Data and Information System, which underlies or provides the foundation for things like Ocean InfoHub, but also anything else that wants to discover who has data about what. So even in the previous presentation, we saw a wonderful example of data sharing. And what ODIS aims to do is make that a lot easier, at least to find the partners that have the data relevant to you, no matter how big or small they are. And that's a very important aspect. We like ODIS to move in the direction of democratization of data, meaning that it doesn't matter if you're a massive infrastructure or a small scale group, or even an individual who has some good data that they want to share on a web page. All of that can be part of ODIS. So that's the substance of it. So I will give a high-level presentation about the concepts behind ODIS, and then Tobias Spear's video that will follow will explain some more of the technical detail of how we actually implement it. And that's also what's very exciting, how quickly we've been able to move forward and implement the concepts, and it's looking good. So moving on. There we go. So the background and our motivation of why we approach this is that, as we all know and we all feel probably daily, many more oceanographic and ocean-related disciplines and groups are releasing data, and they're releasing much more diverse data than we've ever expected. Some of these groups have community standards and some of them don't. Some of them will have data in forms that's not yet standardized because those conversations haven't happened yet. So the variety of the data is increasing alongside its volume, which is increasing very quickly. But also what we have is that we see small scales in terms of the planet, sometimes very large scale, but essentially isolated communities where data sharing is working really well, usually at the level of a nation or a region, when there's a lot of funding available or a lot of energy available to build something that interoperates. But these still are not talking to each other around the world in a very efficient way. Sometimes you'll have one or two data exchanges that are maintained as long as a project or infrastructure funding is available, but they tend to disappear later. And we'd like to use ODIS as a way to change that and to make it more sustainable and make it not rely on any particular project or particular stakeholder running it. So that's what we need. We need a digital glue to stick together all of these different stakeholders to UN data systems, but also give them the independence to connect with each other, regardless of where they come from. And it's important in this that we firmly believe that it's not going to be one single solution that's going to help us face all of the ocean challenges on our table. The challenge is too big and too diverse. We don't even know what the challenges will be in the next 10 years or 5 years, in some cases, especially at local scales. So one portal, one tool, one technology is not going to be able to address that. But what we can do is make sure that whoever is generating tools and technologies and portals and platforms, they're connected and other systems know about them. So when you ask one a question, it can look for answers in other systems. And even if it can't pull the data just yet, it at least knows where to look and who to talk to. So that's the idea behind ODIS. We need to have this kind of lightweight, but very strong digital glue that is connecting these systems at a general level at first. That's phase one of ODIS. Later on, we'll move closer towards the actual data and making sure that the data is flowing in interoperable forms. But first, we'll look at the metadata to make sure at least awareness is there. So that's our mission, that we're building a digital ecosystem for all of the ocean stakeholders who wish to push and pull data among themselves. And that word, that phrase, digital ecosystem, it's not used as a metaphor. It's really what it sounds like. It's a technical term, which we'll get into a little bit later. But how do we accomplish that? Well, we're looking at very easily implementable technologies that already have a good market share, so to speak, that you would be able to hire somebody who knows how to do this. And this is why, as you'll see, we're doing our first iteration in schema.org, which has very, very wide adoption. It's used for Google dataset search, etc. And that's also the nice thing. If you implement the Otis architecture, the digital architecture that helps you connect to Otis, become part of Otis, you also get indexed by things like Google and others. So your data is more transparent and more available in general, regardless of whether IODE central technologies are running. So that's the robust part of it. It does not depend on IODE or indeed anyone else, since we're using well-adopted web standards. And once we have that, it helps all of us understand, all right, which nodes are running, whose nodes, meaning components of the system, members of Otis, what's running, what are they offering, who do I talk to when I need to create a new kind of data exchange? And that goes back to IOD's core mission to promote data exchange across oceanographic stakeholders. Great. Back to that term, the digital ecosystem concept is an important one to us because we really see this as a socio-technical system. The technologies themselves are not the latest technology out there. It's not high technology. These technologies are well established. They've been around for a number of years and they're available. The real challenge is doing the socio part, the sociological part, a kind of digital diplomacy to make sure that all of the regions, their interests and the data that they care about, the issues that they care about, have a voice in the digital system. And that's what we do when we develop these patterns or recommendations. This is the Otis architecture on how to use schema.org to express your data. And that's what's available on our GitHub site for all of your developers to look at. And we provide some support in helping systems setting that up and then plugging into Otis or connecting to Otis. Right. So in sum, this is the text that goes forward to the member states, that Otis is this e-environment which we all build. It's not something that's built by one person. It's built by different stakeholders connecting to one another. And then through this common architecture, which is schema.org at its heart, and later on we can extend that, but first let's at least build the basis. Once we have that, you can find data, you can access it, and you can learn about not just the data, but also the activities, the projects that are generating data or will generate data, or maybe they don't have data yet. Maybe they just have a lot of knowledge, but that's also very, very valuable, and it'll help us communicate across the regions. The important principles here again is that the components of Otis, so your system, if it plugs into Otis, Otis is not going to try to change the way your system runs. We believe that people design their systems to meet the challenges that they face, and that's important. We can't disrupt that. But what we can offer is that once your system is ready, it can project its data out to the rest of the world using the Otis architecture, and it can use that to push and pull data with other nodes in the system. Great. So in a visual summary, we are not trying to build a new hub with Otis. We are trying to build the foundation from which other systems can build hubs or services or whatever you have. Because if we try to build another hub, it's yet another large database. We need something a little bit different, and that's the concept we have. We're trying to enable the original vision of the internet, that the internet itself is our hub. You can then talk to any machine, computer, server, infrastructure using linked open data and semantic web technologies that are web standards. And Otis Arc is just focusing those on the ocean issues and the ocean components that IOC and IODE have detected as priority areas. That's fully extensible, and we're listening to the regions. If there's a kind of data type or a kind of activity that you would like to expose more clearly, we're very willing to create a new pattern for that. And that's what we learned from the regions in this co-design process that Lucy talked about. And that's the point. We're trying to enable it, and anyone with solutions, this makes it easier for them to discover who has what data, pull it in quickly, and then generate a hub on the fly. And if that hub disappears, you don't lose the data because you didn't centralize it. So this is a new kind of thinking, but it's much more flexible. And the Ocean InfoHub project is an implementation of that to demonstrate to ourselves as much as everyone else that this works. And so far it's been very promising. Indeed, as Lucy said, this global linked data universe in the middle here, that's what we're trying to structure a little bit with Otis, but just a little bit so that the UN systems can speak with regional stakeholders and others and generate regional nodes and regional hubs and global hubs and thematic nodes and hubs, whatever they want to, really. But at least we have an easier way to discover things, and we have the The next step is being set up from this conversation to then move to the data types themselves to enhance interoperable data sharing. Some communities are already there with standardized data formats. Others, it's new, so there is nothing yet. But that's fine. You can still connect them at least and bring those communities together and build best practices. Importantly, it's living, it changes, everyone has a role. Some people will be producers of data. They'll have a niche or a role inside the system. Some people will be producers of data. Others would be primary or secondary or tertiary consumers. They might just look at a dashboard with high-level indicators for decision-making. So they're quaternary consumers. But importantly, all of the data is flowing more clearly. We know where it comes from, and we don't waste it. If there's something that's not used, somebody else will probably be able to use it. But at least we have to know where the data is coming from, who has what, and we avoid duplicating data and having data that you're not quite sure where it comes from. Because if you can't trust it, you can't use it for decision making. As a final thought that we leave you with, or I leave you with here, Otis is an attempt to build this digital ecosystem, or the first part or the first foundation of the digital ecosystem of the ocean. There are other activities in the atmosphere, in cities, terrestrial data, etc., which are using similar principles and ideas. But the idea then is to start to merge them, again, through lightweight but robust solutions, because we may have very different ways of approaching problems, but at least some of the basic things we can agree on. That's the socio part of it. And once we start to merge those digital ecosystems, we create a digital biosphere, the sum of all of these ecosystems, which is what we're going to need to sustainably share data to face things that the SDGs outline, and also whatever comes after the SDGs, they will need the same foundation. And we're hoping to get to that future more quickly. So thank you very much, and I leave you with that and welcome any questions that you have.
Thank you very much, Pierre-Louis, for the presentation on all this. We'll now have a presentation from Tobias Pierce on working examples of all this. The floor is yours.
Yeah, can you please stop sharing? Thank you. Thank you, Pierre.
Ocean Data and Information System Architecture Demonstration. This presentation provides an overview of the Ocean Data and Information System Architecture, or ODIS ARC, and its purpose. It describes the basic processes to implement ODIS ARC and how to leverage resources published via ODIS ARC. And finally, this presentation demonstrates some of the current progress on the development of ODIS ARC and its implementation, using a data set from the Ocean Biodiversity Information System as an example. So to set the context, what is ODIS ARC? ODIS ARC is a lightweight architecture which follows best practices for data on the web. Essentially, it is metadata markup. It employs schema patterns based on schema.org, and the content is encoded as JSON linked data, or JSON LD. And it leverages vocabularies that are already established in order to reduce duplication of effort and improving interoperability. And the approach we're taking is a co-development approach. So working to identify core schema patterns for resources. And we're doing that in partnership with implementation partners. So, from the perspective of a resource provider, so whether it's a data set or other resource type, ODIS ARC is really about metadata enrichment and implementation using an approach that is standardized and is recognized and really is driven for direct use via the web. So, what are we describing? The Ocean InfoHub project under the International Oceanographic Data and Information Exchange is currently focused on 6 core content types: documents, experts and institutions, spatial data maps, training, vessels, and projects. However, the intent is to actually scale the architecture out. and previous work completed by IODE on the Otis catalog of sources actually identified 16 core resource types that were deemed to be of critical value. And the intent is that over time we'll be developing schema patterns for each of these types. The implementation of Otis Arc focuses on two primary use cases. First is that of the resource publisher. So this is the group that is supporting content producers and undertaking the technical work required to implement Otis Arc metadata markup. And ultimately, they're involved in the publication and hosting of that enriched metadata for broad reuse. The second use case focuses on resource aggregators. So these are the groups that are basically indexing that Otis Arc compliant metadata content and producing and providing a federated view of published resources. And usually that will be through some lightweight search facility implemented as some form of regional or thematic node or hub. Both of these use cases are supported through the implementation and co-development of the schema.org metadata schema patterns, the development of lightweight search and indexing tools, the resource aggregators themselves are supporting the community by the implementation of regional and thematic nodes and hubs, which themselves can be indexed. And finally, between the Ocean InfoHub project team and in the broader data on the web communities, there's plenty of support available, whether it's hands-on, documentation, and training. The most basic implementation of Otis Arc is comprised of a three-step process and can be achieved with little more than a commodity web server. First, once the resource provider has created metadata for the resource being described, the resource publisher then needs to undertake the technical work to transform that to an Otis Arc compliant format. And this metadata is then embedded in HTML in an HTML page that describes the resource. Once the process has been established for producing the Otis Arc compliant metadata content and encoding that at the individual resource level, the next step is to basically advertise the list of resources that are available to be indexed by external resource aggregators. And that is done using something as simple as a sitemap, which is essentially just a list of indexable resources. Once the list of indexable resources has been established, this then needs to be advertised to resource aggregators for use in indexing and downstream use. This can be done in one of two ways. First, the URL of the sitemap file itself can be provided specifically to known resource aggregators. But the more flexible approach is to essentially use something like a robots.txt file, which basically allows the resource publisher to point to the sitemap file and advertise that to pretty much any indexing service operating across the internet. Once this process is complete, then the resources are readily available for indexing and use in downstream portals and other facilities. Once the resource publication process is complete, these resources can then be used by resource aggregators. The resource aggregators will set up processes to scour the web for content marked up in a recognized form, such as Otis Arc, and use this information to produce information graphs for query purposes. Indexing this content can be targeted, which means that the resource aggregator is looking at specific websites for content that can be indexed, or it may be non-targeted, which means that they're essentially scouring the web and finding whatever they can, and then using queries after the fact to evaluate the relevance. Many tools are available, open source tools or commercial, to facilitate the indexing process. The knowledge graphs produced as a result of indexing can then be used as sources of information for use in driving websites, APIs, and so on. Many tools exist to support the hosting and leverage of these generated information graphs. The following few slides outline some of the progress that is currently being made on the ongoing co-development of Otis Arc and its implementation using a data set currently hosted in the Ocean Biodiversity Information System as an example. It should be important to note that this is demonstrating just a small subset of the Otis architecture. A website has been set up to demonstrate the use of Otis Arc compliant metadata, and the underlying technology that is being developed for this site is available on GitHub and is intended to help new resource aggregators learn the concepts of content indexing, query facilities, and to provide a simple set of tools that can be extended and embedded into an existing web presence. It's important to stress that the metadata that's being used to generate the index, which underlies this sample website, is also available to the world. So that would include other engines such as Google Dataset Search. And where Google's dataset search is focused on data only, Otis Arc extends this further into other content types, and it actually allows linking between different types of resources. Starting with the demonstration site, we can search for the word coral, and we will discover one of the data sets that was exposed by Otis via Otis Arc. If we then proceed to Google Dataset Search, and we search for the title of the first record that was returned when we search for coral, we'll find the same data set that was discovered through the Otis Arc search portal, as well as Otis. And what's critical here is that Google Dataset Search even extends a bit further and provides a listing of other sites where this particular resource has been harvested and advertised. The Otis architecture provides a lightweight approach for resource providers to significantly improve the discoverability of the resources without adding significant amounts of undue effort on the part of themselves or their resource publishing support staff. Much of the content needed to drive Otis Arc is actually being produced, just not in forms not readily reusable by others via the web. And a modest investment in supplementing existing metadata data publication pipelines can yield great returns. And consider participating in the World Wide Web of open data.
Thank you very much for that presentation. We've now got some basic information on what is being implemented at the global level in developing the Otis architecture. I'll now give the floor to Lucy to give us a presentation on the OIH training course. Lucy, please.
Thank you very much, Mika. So the Ocean InfoHub project is, together with the Ocean Teacher Global Academy, developing a training course which will be delivered online in English first, thereafter in Spanish and French language versions. And this course will be delivered between September and December 2021, repeated or extended in 2022. And we will respond to requests from regions to customize these training courses to the requirements of the user communities. So the title is Implementing the Ocean Data and Information System Architecture, and the course's central aims are to equip participants with a conceptual understanding of what Otis is, why it has been created, and how it works. To equip participants with conceptual and practical understandings of the technical components of Otis, including its use of schema.org, patterns, and web-based publishing and harvesting, and to provide participants with the tools they need to describe their metadata or data and publish it. The expected learning outcomes include an understanding of the Ocean InfoHub project, an understanding of the Ocean Data and Information System, and an understanding of how to incorporate Otis schema.org patterns into existing online databases or websites. So the training will really be around the previous two presentations you've heard from Pierluigi and Tobias, but going into more in-depth detail. The target audience should have an understanding of JSON and the HTML document object model, and how to configure extensions to their web framework if they're using a web framework. The course content will include high-level concepts of the Ocean InfoHub project and ODIS, a general introduction to our use of schema.org, the ODIS schema.org patterns, setting up the standard publishing or contribution environment, harvesting patterns in JSON, RDF, and querying harvested material. For more information, please subscribe to our mailing list or send me a direct email to be informed personally when the course is announced. We will share the course information very widely through our website, mailing list, and other avenues as soon as it's developed and becomes available. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lucy, for the presentation on the OIH training course. In the presentation that you had previously, we've talked of the 6 thematic areas that we are addressing in Ocean InfoHub. One of them is experts and institutions. The second one is on documents. The third one is on spatial data and maps. The fourth one is on research vessels. The fifth one is on education and training opportunities. And the sixth one on projects. The next presentation is going to cover one of these thematic areas that we have been able to get resources to delve in much more detail. That's the education and training opportunities. Abby will make a presentation on the training and the education opportunities portal that we intend to develop in the framework of the Ocean Info project. Abby, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mika. Let me wait for my slides to load. Okay, so I'll be giving a presentation on the Ocean Information Hub database for training opportunities for Africa. And next slide, please. Okay, so I think just a big brief background on the project. Lucy, Pierluigi, and Tobias have informed you, I think, prior on what the project is all about, so I will not repeat on that. And this project, the Ocean InfoHub project, was funded by the government of Flanders, Kingdom of Belgium. And as Lucy had mentioned before, we'll use a number of online IOC data sources, such as Ocean Expert, Ocean Doc, Ocean Best Practice System, the Ocean Biodiversity Information System, and the Ocean Data Portal. These I've just repeated for now. And already we have existing repositories and partnerships, which we'll work with and from which we'll source some of the data from. And this is like POGO, that is a partnership for observation of global oceans, the Scientific Committee of Oceanic Research SCORE, the European Marine Observation Data Network, that is EMODNET, the Ocean Teacher Global Academy, the IOC Capacity Development, and marinetraining.eu, and EuroOcean, to mention but a few. And from what Mika has just mentioned, we have these 3 pilot regions, that is Africa, Latin America, and the Caribbean, and where there were thematic areas of focus that he has just highlighted. So I will not repeat that for now. Next slide, please. As one of our partners that I have mentioned, that is marinetraining.eu, who will be one of the implementing partners of the project. So I'll just give you a brief insight in what it is all about. So marinetraining.eu came into inception in 2013 as a service of the European Marine Biological Research Center, and it is hosted at Ghent University. And Ghent University is a renowned center of academic excellence and research, and in one of its senates, we have maritime and marine skills that are ever present in the history of the university, and it's in current it's in current research and education curricula. And also with Ghent University's vast experience in marine human capacity, they have participated in a number of European Commission funded research projects and joint programs for the enhancement of human potential to fully integrate higher education. And also in support of the global maritime portal, that is the marinetraining.eu, Ghent University has also supported the development of a regional portal for the Caribbean Large Marine Ecosystem Plus project that is known as the CLME Plus. Next slide, please. So now to our focus for Africa, that is the Ocean InfoHub Africa database. So why do we need it? So based on data, and it has been found that there's no single database on marine and coastal training opportunities in Africa, and therefore most of the existing training opportunities come from different number of distributed resources, and most of these are institutional websites, and content is therefore not easy to find. And the Ocean InfoHub project had a meeting where they therefore identified the need for a searchable online database of training opportunities, specifically that is relevant to African marine and coastal scientists and managers. And in subsequent meetings, this was further reiterated in the project, and therefore we also saw a need for the interoperability of training opportunities. So the main objective and purpose of the Ocean InfoHub database for Africa will be to set up a new database of training opportunities that is tailor-made for Africa. Next slide, please. So the target audience for this Ocean InfoHub database for Africa will be, some have been mentioned before, but I'll just repeat this. We'll have the institutions delivering and seeking training opportunities. Those will be our partners, will give us the necessary information to populate the database. We'll have managers and those who inform policy. We'll have researchers. We'll have early career ocean professionals known as the AirCops, and also I believe we'll also need to have local communities, because having worked with local communities, they really want to be informed on what happens in the ocean science landscape, and we'll also be greatly learning get learning resources from the database. Next slide, please. I think as Pierre Luigi has touched on this a bit, and also Tobias mentioned something on the design process. We'll focus primarily on, it will be threefold. So first we'll have to focus on the audit specifications. And one of the themes that our partners are mainly interested in is training opportunities. So the audit architecture looks at developing together with several partners a search of opportunities across many databases. So this will therefore call for the interoperability within existing hubs and training opportunities. And also it will allow stakeholders to search, get data from different stakeholders to interoperate with one another. And also, as Pierre Luigi had mentioned, we have a proof of concept, and the Ocean InfoHub project is currently working on developing this concept based on the ODIS architecture, and this is also based on a lightweight schema.org set of specifications that had been mentioned before. And lastly, we'll have the adoption of the ODIS specifications, which will be enabled by the underlying ODIS architecture, where training partners will be able to adopt the specifications and allow records to be pushed and pulled from their training hubs and portals. In this way also, owners of training opportunities such as the Ocean Teacher Global Academy or the OTGA will be able to continue uploading and managing their own records, and this will be discoverable through the ODIS ecosystem. Next slide, please. So within the framework of the project, this is the Ocean InfoHub project and also the database for Africa, we saw it's relevant to be in coherence with certain IOC programs and international frameworks and instruments. So the first of focus is the IOC capacity development strategy. And this strategy runs from 2015 to 2021 this year. And it was adopted at the 20th session of the IOC Assembly. And one of its tenets is capacity building. And on the sustainable development goals, the database will inform these 4 goals that I've highlighted, that is goal 4, 9, 14, and 17. And how will it do this? When we touch on goal 4, we have quality education. It will enhance discovery opportunities in training and education. And on goal 9, industry innovation and infrastructure, it will do this by supporting innovation through the exchange of technology and expertise. And on goal 14, on life below water, it will the database will provide a two-way exchange where we'll use information between established local, national, and regional providers. And on goal 17, that is a partnership for the goals. This will be achieved through the exchange of technology, capacity building, and connection providers and use of digital products. And on Agenda 2063 for Africa, that is the Africa we want. we already have identified, we have 3 pilot regions where the project is going to work in, and Africa being one of them. We are closely working with the IOC Subcommission for Africa, that is the IOC of UNESCO, and adjacent island states, where there'll be implementation of the ODIS architecture. And as Lucy mentioned before, we'll work with the National Oceanographic Data Centers, that is the NODCs in the region. And the project activities or the database activities will therefore align with flagship programs based on Africa or the Agenda 2063. And this will be strengthening education systems for sustainable development in Africa. Sorry, this is on the operational strategy for Priority Africa that runs from 2014 to 2021. And so on this, the 2 flagship programs will be strengthening education systems for sustainable development in Africa, and to foster science and sustainable management of Africa's natural resources and disaster risk reduction. And also on Africa's Agenda 2063, so to correct this, the Africa we want, I think Africa has its blue economy strategy, and also within the Agenda 2063 itself, we aim to have well-informed and educated citizens who are underpinned by science. And also within the agenda, as I've said, we need to enhance the continent's blue economy. So the database will greatly inform this. And on the Paris Agreement, the database will enable us to create a scalable and inclusive system to allow multi-stakeholder data, information, and knowledge exchange. And we'll also support several objectives of the Paris Agreement. And lastly, we recently had the launch of the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development. And this was last week with it starting early January and runs from 2021 to 2030. And the project on the database will inform Theme 6 on a transparent ocean. So the Ocean Information Hub Africa database of training opportunities will align with this theme and will contribute directly to the outcomes. For outcomes, this is a comprehensive ocean observing system for all major basins, data and an information portal, and capacity building and accelerated technological transfer training. This is ocean literacy. Next slide, please. So in implementation of the database development that is for Africa, it will be done in 8 months, and this has already started. And we have implementing partners which are of the IOC Africa. We have University of Ghent, marinetraining.eu. We have the IOEDE project office, and yeah, so those I've mentioned. And this will each have their assigned role, and they'll do this within a number of months in the given timeline. We'll have stakeholder analysis, and we'll have contact of focal points for addition. So these 2, I think, had been started within, I think, early January, and there was done mostly by my colleague John. So we'll advance on that henceforth, and we'll have the entry of new institutions and a review of websites. Then there's the development of the front end for the portal based on the CLME template that I talked about before. And this will be customized specifically for Africa. And we'll have the incorporation of ODIS standards and interoperability with other platforms. And the training of users will be done in July. And data entry also will come towards July, October. And we also have a link with Global OIH and other IOC Africa websites. And the official launch we anticipate will be sometime in November through social media outlets and newsletters, and also we are likely to have a webinar. So this is just a schematic of how we hope to achieve this within the 8 months, and we hope to see this through to fruition with all the efforts we're putting in. Next slide, please. So at the moment, we have this domain for the database that is africa.marinetraining.org, and it is in operation, but it hasn't been populated yet because we are currently in the inception phase. So within the next few months, I think with the official launch, as I've mentioned, towards November, once it's fully, I think, populated, you'll be able to, as participants here and also as relevant stakeholders, once the data is fully available, you'll be able to access it on that domain there. And yeah, So within the next few months. So next slide, please. So as I come to my, as I conclude, I want to say, express my gratitude to the government of Flanders, Kingdom of Belgium for funding this project, and also our partners, the Norwegian Agency for Development Cooperation. Next slide, please. So thank you so much for listening in. As I said, we have the domain link available. Once it's available, you'll be able to access it. If you have any questions for me or to my team, you can add them to the chat section. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abby, for the presentation on the development of the portal for training opportunities. We'll now open the floor for discussions on how we proceed with development of the regional node for the Ocean Information Hub. We've had the progress at the global level. We've heard of the three areas of three regions of focus, and we've heard of the 6 thematic areas that have been identified, and specifically what we are doing in one of the thematic areas. So the floor is now open for questions and discussions. If you want to intervene, please raise your hand and we'll give you the floor. I'd like to request the panelists to open their videos so that we can have the discussion. So the floor is open for anybody who would like to pose a question or make a comment. I take it that there's no question or comment. There was an earlier question in the chat that was answered by Lucy in the chat. Maybe I could pose it to Lucy now. The question was from Frederick Bono, who asked whether OIH can fund research project for monitoring of some oceanic parameters near coastal regions of West Africa. Maybe Lucy, you respond to that now before you go to the question before you give the floor to Anja.
Yes, sure, Mika, and thank you, Frederick, for your question. So in response, I mentioned that the Ocean InfoHub project is using its resources, which are fairly limited, to develop interoperability between existing information systems. So mostly we don't fund research projects or in-situ monitoring projects directly. However, we do have a lot of partners, and certainly together with IOC Africa, we could see whether your activities could be supported by national oceanographic data centers in your region or other research or monitoring programs or sources of funding. And then we do have support to assist you in the sharing of data or metadata that results using the specifications that we've developed and published online. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Lucy. Before you give the floor to Anja, Frederick, do you have any remark on that? Then you give the floor to Anja Kremer.
Okay, thank you, Mika. I'm currently in isolation, so I had time to listen to the whole thing. And it was indeed very interesting. And I mean, you know that I've been involved with you for a long time, and you know our struggles in Namibia. I mean, you've been here, Mika, to talk to our EDs, and we somehow still have not moved a step forward towards data sharing, online databases, even setting up a metadata sort of catalog for the data. I have copied, or I have sent the link and the link to the presentations to our IT and told them, you know, this is the way to go. And I wonder if under the Ocean InfoHub project, you have an idea how, you know, how to deal with the Namibian situation, where we do have a lot of good quality data. I think there we really in an exceptional position. I mean, we've got monitoring data of environmental parameters for over 20 years, and they are in databases, mainly in access databases. We've got with the oceanographic data a bit of problem now, that our database worked on Windows XP and nothing afterwards. So we're trying to bring it over to SQL with an access front end, but we're lacking the expertise. We've got one person who knows the oceanographic data, and if she leaves, we have we're almost back to Excel spreadsheets. So would there be some assistance? Because I think the willingness at Nutmeg is there now. I saw that from the comments I received from my colleague after our meeting last week, Lucy, where she said, yes, we want to, but we don't know how. Even the basic, which format in, which data, we basically don't know how to start because we don't have the IT people. I think that's the simple breakdown. Thank you. I don't know who can answer that. If they are, Lucy has a hand up.
Lucy, please.
Thanks, Mika. Thanks, Anya. I think probably many NODCs around the world might echo your frustration and challenges. So I think we'd really like to work with you on this. And not only might it help Namibia to expose and share the data that you choose, but it might also be a really nice model for other NODCs around Africa and elsewhere. One of the patterns we are working on is spatial data and maps. So that might be another really nice link to your Atlas project. Otherwise, we could look at those other 5 categories of data and see what might be easiest to implement first off as kind of a demonstration, and then develop from there. But I'd also like Pierluigi to give maybe a perspective from the more technical side as well. Thanks, Anya.
Yeah, it is a tricky situation. It's strange, even in high capacity nations, digital capacity nations, there's still the same scenario. You have 1 or 2 people who really know how to run a system, and if they leave or retire or something, you can't run it anymore. And I think this is this role of the Otis architecture, that it's above the system that implements it. So the system that implements it will be exporting these records that go into Otis CAT. And if that changes, that export doesn't necessarily change. So you can change it. You can even use Excel files if you want to, and still have a simple script to generate the schema.org. Those are available, and we can certainly help figure out how to do that, just to make it more robust, that even if those systems change, the participation in Otis as a node is not compromised. And to how to make that more sustainable, I think that's a broader question that I think we should also think about, because there are very comparatively lightweight ways to manage information with minimal training. And that, of course, would make the local nodes more robust. So, yeah, I don't know, Lucy, I think it sounds like, cataloging of these sort of scenarios, these operational scenarios, is very much needed from all of our regions, right? Saying like, look, this is the reality on the ground that we have in this nation or in this situation. So for us to reflect on, do you think we could start to amass that or send out a survey to get these perspectives? Lucy, that's to you.
That would certainly be one way forward. We can discuss that with Mika, perhaps.
Mm-hmm. I see more questions.
One of the proposals has been to reactivate the Odin Africa network of NODCs and institutions that we had operating for quite some time. One of the issues that has been raised is that in a number of institutions, the people who are trained have either moved out or moved up, and therefore there's that lack of trained personnel to handle data sets and databases, like already mentioned by Anne. Maybe that's something that we can discuss at length. How do we reactivate the Odin Africa network? Is it necessary? What sort of focus should we have if we reactivate it? If we are looking at training, what sort of training should we be looking at? What sort of data sets do we have in these institutions? And what skills do they lack to be able to manage these data sets? how can we make use of the OTG regional training centers in this regard? Maybe those are some of the things that we could reflect on. Peter, I see you have a comment on the chat. Do you like to have the flag raise it?
Well, I can just maybe clarify. There was the request from Robert regarding, well, there is now the development of the database of training opportunities. He says, well, it would be good, I think, if there was also a database of existing expertise. Now, for that, we have the Ocean Experts at www.oceanexperts.org. So I think that would be good to consider. I think Mika has been regularly trying to get the information updated. So we're calling again on all the experts in the African member states to update their information. You may want to add a bit more detail. And also, is it still up to date? Because people are invited to provide some detailed information on their expertise. The second question was from Makanbi Williams. I wish for good data system on marine biodiversity data taxonomy. Well, there is, of course, the Ocean Biodiversity Information System, OBIS, www.obis.org. And in fact, there is an OBIS node in Africa. So there is, in fact, a database on African biodiversity. That being said, of course, there should be more input into OBIS, especially OBIS Africa. So there again, a call to the African scientists to contribute. And there's also the World Register of Marine Species, which is related. That's all I think I can say here.
Also a question by Gustav. Gustav, we'll give you the floor that you can pose your question to the panel.
Gustav, unmute your mic, please.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Okay, so my question. So we're working with the WIRE region to put together data for cumulative impact assessments, and so this question was sort of from that experience. There's a lot of data out there, and people might be unsure where to put it. So I know that's not the focus of this project, but did I understand that you have some way of actually publishing spatial data also? So can you help with that if people have data they want to get out there, and where would it then be stored and accessed?
Take that. So again, the Otis system does not constrain on where you store the data. We have contacts, of course, in the network who could probably accommodate such data in the long term, and we could help find them. But the main thing is to let people know that it exists and where it is right now. So that's the schema.org pattern on spatial data that we have, which allows you to declare where that data, where in the world, using sort of OGC standards. So you can put it into a map file or so, and you can say, okay, I have spatial data about this area, and then you link off to the data wherever it's currently stored. Even if you don't have a service right now to provide those links, at least you can say who to contact for that spatial data. Once you do find a home for it, that's a long-term archive or so, then that same record can be updated to point to the location on that long-term archive. But once again, we don't provide the storage solution for that, but we can help you find one. Again, if you contact us, we can certainly reach out to our networks.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Peter Pisiersens has
Yeah, just to complement, in fact, one of the realizations we had early on was that in many countries and many institutions, the IT infrastructure or in hosting especially doesn't exist yet. Also, some of the expertise may not exist locally. So there will soon be an ODIS partnership center, which is based in Russia, where institutions that are currently not able to host their own data they will be able to deposit their data there, and that system will then be connected to ODIS. That is seen, of course, as a transitional measure towards the self-hosting of data, but that is also an option. And of course, for biodiversity data, as already mentioned, you can contact your African OBIS node, or you can contact the OBIS data center in Ostende if you need more information on how to collaborate with OBIS.
Yes, Lucy.
Thank you. Just responding to another question in the chat, or actually an intervention, was from Robert, who says, I hope there will be an alignment with the existing Ocean Expert database to create synergies with the proposed new database on African training opportunities. That's a very good point, and it in fact is something that we are addressing. So the African database, the new African database on training opportunities, is drawing heavily from Ocean Expert. In fact, the two systems will be linked with the ODIS architecture for a start. But secondly, actually, in the population of the new database on African training opportunities, Abby and Mika and John and I are going to be working with the Ocean Expert database as a reference. So we're going to be looking at all of the African content in Ocean Expert, contacting all the IOC focal points to get additional content about institutions and training platforms, institutions, universities, and other agencies into Ocean Expert. And then from there will actually be quite an intensive process of either contacting or doing desktop research about these institutions to populate the database on training opportunities, but also to improve the content of the records in Ocean Expert. So it's very much a kind of a joint activity. So we'll be improving both those systems, and they will also be linked with the ODIS architecture. So thanks very much for that question.
Sorry, I lost my connection. Trying to link through an iPad. Lucy, maybe you help to proceed.
Thanks, Mika. I think I've asked the last question in the chat. Another intervention from Namibia was to suggest that in addition to spatial data, we could look at marine spatial planning data. And I think that's also a great idea. So we can discuss that with Anya offline in addition. And I don't see additional questions in the Q&A.
I could mention about marine spatial planning is that for Eastern Africa, we have quite a number of initiatives that are planned together with both WIOMSA and the Nairobi Convention, both at the national level and at the regional level. We are hoping to have a regional meeting towards the end of the year. At national level, we've already held a series of national workshops. For the Atlantic coast, we still have to discuss this with potential partners and see what would be possible. Maybe, as Anya mentions, this is something that we could work on with the BCC.
Thanks, Mika. I agree, that would be good.
Okay, so Lucy, how are we going to, so we get inputs from partners, and it's usually a one-to-one sort of communication. They let us know one of their scenarios, etc. Is there any way we can better organize that in the region? For example, having some kind of regional sort of meeting about this, just to sort of list it a bit more systematically, like a short workshop or maybe part of another workshop. Do you think that's an idea? Because, you know, every time, like what Anya has just described to us, you know, that's very, very important for us to help express within this region how the Otis Arc can help when you have turbulence underneath your data systems. You know, if they can change or if they're brittle, how can we add more robustness or anti-fragility, as they say, to the system? Thoughts?
Thanks, Pierluigi. Yes, so we have our a tracking sheet of implementation partners. We're trying to sort of capture requests and issues on. But in addition to that, and I think probably more in line with an answer to your question, is that we've, well, Mika and the other African core IOC Africa team has decided to hold a regular meeting every 2 weeks. So this is something, a meeting in which we can track the progress of the database development, the work on our Ocean Expert, and the other activities for Africa. I think it would be great if we could invite our implementation partners, either all or depending on their current activity, 1 or 2 per meeting, and then we could actually have that opportunity to discuss their specific questions and their specific needs using that platform. Because that meeting's already set up every 2 weeks, it's a really great opportunity for people to come and go, and they know that the meeting is being held. So we don't have to go into involved doodle polling to find dates and times. Of course, we can set up customized meetings for any of our partners, but at this stage, I think since there are only 2 or 3 that are really getting involved in the implementation of the specifications right now, I think we can use that Monday regular meeting as an opportunity. Mika, what would you say to that?
I think that would indeed be something that we should explore. I noticed that Rita said that she'll have to leave us because of load shedding. Thank you very much for joining us. Let's give the floor to James.
So if I may complete that. So just again, it occurred to me that we have our Ocean Best Practices workshop. I put the link in the chat also. So the IOC UNESCO Ocean Best Practices Community Workshop. That's from September 20th to 24th. Perhaps that's a good chance to sort of bring the communities that's contributed to these regular meetings together and say, here on the record, so to speak, are the needs that we have, the capacities that we have, and suggestions we have for the data sharing in the region and globally. So if you'd like to consider convening a track, so there's a ability to propose tracks, I'm happy to help you formulate that track too. It might be a nice way to sort of consolidate the input we're getting so far. I'll leave that there for your consideration.
Thank you very much. So I'll now give the floor to James. And while James is intervening, I'd like to invite the people from the other NODCs to reflect on how can we improve the participation of NODCs in this initiative. I'm particularly looking at Aram, at Saida, and at Zachary. James, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mika and Lucy. Thank you to see there. I hope I'm audible enough. So yeah, mine is just a notification and also a question at the same time. So we'll be beginning our integration. So that is called East Africa. We'll be trying out the schemas that have already been developed. So we want to try test data from our portals to the OIH. And so I'm just wondering whether there will be anyone on standby or how we can reach to any technical assistance once we run into problems. I'm hoping Pia you can provide maybe some assistance at some point.
Mm-hmm. We do have our contractor, Doug Phils, who actually has made time available, like office hours available, to help answer questions or so, and he's the right person to address on this. You can also join, if you're not already there, you can join our Slack space. We can put an invitation link in the chat. And inside that space, you can always ask a question, and that's visible to us all. I think that would be the best way to do it. And you can organize ad hoc meetings with Doug if you have particular questions.
Okay, yeah, okay, thanks.
Lucy, you had asked for the floor.
Thanks, Mika. I was going to add to the response to James, but actually Pierluigi has covered exactly what I was going to say. Okay. So thanks, James. Please do get in touch with us. And Doug and the Slack channel or an email to me are the best avenues. Thanks very much.
There have been several comments from Robert on the chat. Maybe we give you, Robert, the floor to also say something. Robert, the floor is yours.
Robert, please request to speak. You can unmute now. Thank you.
Hello. Can you?
Yes, we can hear you.
Currently, I'm not working in the WIO, but originally I'm from Kenya. One of the key challenges that I've observed rather in the WIO region is data access and sharing. We have each of the NODCs has available data sets, but getting all this data, let's say if I wanted bathymetry data today for Kenya, it'd be very difficult for me to have that available. And the process of getting it is also not so simple. So I was wondering whether there's a way where we can actually put together all these data sets in a platform, because I'm working in the Irish Sea, and for the Marine Institute, they have a regional database for both for island region, where if I wanted bathymetry of Bascara data, for instance, it's very simple, and the database is very simple to use and access, free access actually. So that's my key concern.
So the issue of access to data is usually quite a challenge, especially if you're looking at bathymetry in the near coastal areas. In some of the countries, they restrict access to such data set. But it's something that we should discuss and see how best this could be addressed, especially as I'm aware that now many of the institutions have reasonable amounts of data sets. Some of.
Yes, exactly. And again, the spirit of Otis and the Otis Arc and Ocean InfoHub is at least to start this process by sharing the metadata of what you have. It could be at a record level, individual records, or generically. Yes, we have bathymetric data about this region, right? So that's already the first step, because quite a lot of the time, we don't even know that resources exist unless they're in our networks already and people are talking about them. So hopefully we're trying to even that out with this Otis architecture, that those well-run databases that you mentioned can advertise the fact that they have those holdings inside the region, but also globally, and also can find maybe databases in another region that have complementary data about the home region, but just didn't necessarily share it in a focused way. They shared it generically, but you could never find it. So I think that's the step. But when it comes to those, like bathymetric data is a good example. That would be a very good candidate for the next phase of Otis, where it's not just about the metadata, but we'll think about how to share the actual data records a bit more interoperable with input from the partners. Again, with the relationships we're building now in the regions, that's why it's so important that we understand the challenges you have, the capacities you have, and the concerns you have. Like, what do you need the data for? That will help us build things a little bit more robustly.
Maybe I could also mention that we had an initial workshop with the Seaboard 2030 project in February on how to improve the mapping along the African coastline. And this generated quite a lot of interest, and we are planning a follow-up workshop later this year, the first week of December, I'll be sharing details of this through our various channels.
That's very interesting. And also, like, when these workshops occur and recommendations are developed, or even some methods are collected, I think it's a very good idea to put them into the Ocean Best Practices system, so that again they're part of this digital ecosystem right away, right? Even if they're not, let's say, a finished product, but they're just a set of guidelines or recommendations. That's valuable already, and there's a home for that inside the IOC systems with the Ocean Best Practice system.
I'll now give the floor to Zachary, I think, and then maybe one more question. So Zachary first, and then one more person. Zachary, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for panelists for the speech. You were talking last about the bathymetry data. I already posted a question to the chat on the chat. I don't know what you think about this bathymetry data, because the big challenge today is the shallow water bathymetry data. What can we do for this data? Because also with GEPCO already did bathymetry data till to 100 meters. And in our coastal region, I think that the majority of resources with our fishermen, they exploited the resources in the shallow water. How can we resolve this problem to know how can we get this bathymetry in shallow water? That is my question.
Is this something that maybe Peter could address?
Oh, you're throwing me in the water. No, just to mention that during IOD 26, when the IOD committee recommended the establishment of the ODIS Ocean Data and Information System project, we called for volunteers for the steering group, and one of them was Evert Vlier, who works in Norway and who represents GEPCO. So I think that's a good channel through which we can express these needs for more nearshore bathymetric data and higher resolution. It's not a new requirement, and in fact, I think thanks you cannot say, but because of the 2004 tsunami, there was a lot of pressure on bathymetric agencies to share more nearshore bathymetric data as well.
Thank you very much, Peter. Maybe this is something that we could also put on the agenda for the symposium we are planning with the CBEC 2030 towards the end of the year. Maybe one final question or comment before we close. Anybody has a burning question or comment? Then I think we will stop at this point. We have agreed that we'll explore more how to involve the NODCs much more in the initiative. We look at more regular interaction with partners to ensure that we develop databases which are really relevant to the needs of our stakeholders. With this, I'd really like to thank all of you who have participated in this meeting, and I look forward to interacting continuously with you. Please feel free to contact me or Lucy regarding participation of your institution in the initiative. And also for those who are in the initial Odin Africa network, for reactivation of the network on how we can proceed with this. So with this, I'd really like to thank all of you, and I think this is a good